on accounting, taxes, and banking. And we have two guests, David Sherwin and Eric Chute. I got the idea for these sessions because as a new RMT and a new business owner at various stages of my career, I found it really tricky to come across support and answers to some of these questions. So I thought this would be just a great way to connect people in our industry with other experts. So I'm open to feedback, suggestions for other topics, and yeah, I'd just love to hear what you guys think. So 2 quick tips before we get started. Please mute your mic for the presentations, and then feel free to unmute and participate in the Q&A sessions. And if you have questions that come up and you don't want to ask them, you can type your questions into the chat. You'll find the chat bubble on the top right. It looks like a little speech bubble. And if you would rather ask it yourself, just hang on. There will be 2 opportunities for you to ask questions of Eric and David and myself, if you like. Oh, next. Oops, there we go. So just a brief introduction of myself. My name's Robin Lofstrand. I'm a massage therapist and I'm the owner at Zenith Wellness Co. I have been doing this officially 10 years next month, which kind of blows my mind. I went to MH Vickers School here in Edmonton, and I've had a lot of different careers in massage therapy. I was a full-time contractor at a clinic for 3 years. I did other various part-time jobs, including events, workplace massage, sporting events, post-race sweaty sport massage, things like that. And then I went into, I left the clinic environment and went full-time self-employed for mobile massage for a few years, operated as a sole proprietor. Got to the point where I had as many clients as I could have and just needed a new challenge. So in September of 2016, I opened my business, which is called Zenith. And our first location was just 1 room, me and another therapist. And it's just been growing slow and steady ever since. We're 2 locations now. And the second location, which opened in September of 2019, is also, when that location opened, is also when I incorporated. So the piece that David is going to speak to about sole proprietor versus incorporation, that was something that I went through fairly recently, and I'm still trying to figure out. I have questions all the time about that, so I'm excited for you to hear more about that. So our agenda for today is I'm just going to do a little introduction, and then Eric is going to do his presentation. And then we'll pause, and if there's any questions at that point, we'll have a little Q&A. And then we'll move into David's presentation, and then again at the end, we'll have another chance to ask questions. So our first speaker today is Eric Chute. He's the Business Development Manager at ATB. Eric and I met about 3 years ago, and he and I are in the same networking group together, which is also how I know David Sherwin. He is a chartered accountant with Frederick and Sherwin LLP, and he is going to, like I said, speak to some of the most daunting and confusing subjects when you're new in massage or expanding your business. So looking forward to both of those presentations. So as I mentioned, I know these 2 fine gentlemen through my networking group. So I just wanted to speak to BNI very briefly. I'm sure I know at least a couple of you here have heard of BNI before and potentially have been to a meeting. BNI is an international organization. It's a networking group. It used to be face-to-face. Now we've had a year of practicing it on Zoom, and it's been going really well. This is a selection of some of the members of our chapter. There are, I believe, 18 in our group right now. But just as a little side note, I know massage therapists right now are really struggling with ideas for marketing. Every time there's an announcement from the government, we get this real slowdown in the bookings because of general confusion about, are you open, are you closed? These folks right here have been so supportive and so crucial, not only in sending referrals my way and helping me with marketing, But just in generally supporting Zenith, I actually joined BNI at the time that I opened Zenith and went from just a mobile massage therapist to trying to expand. And both personally and professionally, this group has been there for me in 100 different ways. Um, Everything from helping me with graphic design questions to business coaching. Obviously, accounting and banking are right up there as well. Tim on the bottom right has showed up at my house, left watching football at his house on a Sunday to help me with a plumbing emergency. The whole real estate team, Sandra, Alexis, Vanessa, they all helped with when I purchased my condo. And every week I just learned great stuff from these guys. So I could literally go on and on about BNI. Some people have a interesting sort of preconceived notions. They might think it's a little culty. I don't think calling ourselves chapters helps that at all. But if you have any questions about BNI, or if you're interested in learning about not just joining, but how you can take advantage of the fact that visiting meetings right now is free. So if you just want to get out there and network, practice your elevator pitch, meet some people, share your ideas, maybe connect with someone who is going the same direction as you, and you can, spark ideas off each other. There's so much potential. I love talking about BNI, so please do feel free to reach out to myself or Eric or David, because we're all in this chapter together. So I'm going to exit my screen sharing here and come back. And we're going to get ready for our first presenter. So I'm going to pass the torch over to Mr. Eric Chute, and he's going to tell us all about ATB.
Perfect. So is my screen showing up there?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So just a little bit to get started here. Obviously, thanks, Robin, for organizing this, and thanks those for taking the time this evening to come out and join us to learn about the exciting topics of banking and accounting. So for those that don't know about ATB Financial, here's just a little bit, some quick information about us. So essentially, it's a financial institution it's actually a little bit different than the other big 5 banks. It actually is owned by the government of Alberta and operates as a crown corporation. So the one good thing with this is that basically means that 100% of your deposits are guaranteed, which is a little bit different than the main 5 banks. In terms of that, we have over 5,000 employees that fully service over 800,000 customers across the province and beyond. So essentially what this means is that even our customer care center, when you call them the 1-800 number, you're talking to someone that's typically in Calgary. And it's basically, it prides itself on being the bank of and for entrepreneurs. And everyone has probably seen the advertisements on TV and the radio in terms of ATB, whether it's from Dave Mowat to ATB Listens a few years ago, all the way to the TV ads on there now. So a little bit about myself. So I've actually only been in banking for 5 years with my degree in environmental studies and city planning. And then I was a golf professional and teaching lessons. So it's kind of a bit of a career change for me, but I had now been in banking for 5 years. I've moved up the ladder now into this new role of business development manager with ATB. So while you're here tonight, how can ATB help you? Well, the first and biggest reason is free banking. Obviously, especially in this pandemic time and with the shutdowns that you guys have all experienced, the bank fees are something that David will talk about that you can write off. Essentially, though, however, if you are getting them for free, it is a lot better. So if we were looking at switching over to ATB now, we can offer anywhere from 3 to 12 months of free account fees. So this could be a savings of upwards of $500 just in terms of bank fees, depending on the account type that you're in. And another good thing that ATB offers and has for several years now is our free banking promotion for new startups. So if you've freshly gone from a sole proprietor to an incorporation, or you're just starting out as a sole proprietor and you've incorporated or done that in 2021, we will be able to offer you free banking for a full year. And essentially how I like to position ATB as opposed to the other main banks is it's never a conversation about products to start. To me, the first meeting that's very important. It's about that discovery process. It's about finding out what's important for you and what's important to you. So for some, it could be that fees, which is totally fine. That's definitely where we can still beat the main 5 banks, especially in that first year with the account waivers. But what's a big thing in banking is that relationship piece. You want to be able to call someone, go see someone, we're allowed to do that again, and be able to get that advice from them. Because I mean, when it comes down to it, you guys are experts at massaging people. So when I go golfing 5 times a week and I feel like I'm 50 years old, I come to you to fix that. Robin knows that I've been there several times in the last month. But when it comes to banking and finances, that's where me and David here are here to help. So whether it's you have questions on what type of credit card should I get, or should I look at getting a line of credit because I want to buy, say, a new massage bed, or maybe I'm like Robin and wanting to expand to a different location. Maybe you need some help on lending in terms of that. So that's the big thing where I come in, is having that initial conversation with you, finding out what your goals are, and then coming up with a plan to let you reach them. Whether that's a short term, long term, or both. That's essentially what I'm here for. And the good news with ATB is that we can both offer those low fees and that relationship piece. So speaking to that, as Robin mentioned, we've known each other for over 3 years now. I believe I joined the BNI chapter that she's in 2018, I believe. So it's just over 3 years. And essentially, she talked about BNI, so there's a little bit of blur about that. But since 2018, I've helped Robin go through many changes with both her business and personal banking. I believe she was a sole proprietor when we first met, but at that time she hadn't yet had a business banking account open. She was still operating through a personal account, which if David was your accountant, David probably wouldn't like that. So we were able to open her up her account. And then in the meantime, since then, obviously we helped her with banking in terms of her condo purchase. And also now she's just recently gone through incorporation. So we helped her with that. And then obviously once COVID hit, we were able to point her in the right direction, how to apply for government programs such as the Canada Emergency Business Account. So Robin, would you like to speak to a little bit about how ATB and myself have helped you throughout the process?
Sure, yeah. First, I'll mention the reason that I switched away from my bank was that every time I was at the teller, it felt like they were trying to get me to sign up for a new credit card, sell me some new product, increase my credit limit, etc. But so many times they were making mistakes and missing things that were just really the basics, in my opinion, of like that personal experience. I had money sitting in my savings and I didn't keep money in my checking, and no one thought to mention to me for years and years that if I just moved some of that money from my savings to my checkings, I wouldn't have to pay bank fees. And that annoyed me to no end. And at that same time, I met who was then Eric's boss, Terrence, and learned about ATB. And I made the switch, and it's been just great ever since. I know several people by name at the bank, and I'm always impressed when they know me by name. I bank at the same branch all the time, and it just feels very personal. Some of the steps that I took in my business, there are so many questions involved. That switch from personal banking to business banking was a big one. It was really nice to have support for that. I lose my debit card regularly. It's just nice to know who to talk to freeze it until I find it again. And so, yeah, I can't say enough good things about banking with ATB in terms of the difference between just a place that's holding your money for you and then someone that actually wants the best for you and your money. So that was a good choice for me switching.
Awesome, thanks for that. And it would be noted that Robin has lost her bank card before and texted me at 9 o'clock at night, and I have been able to freeze that for her. So that's not something you would get at other banks either, as you wouldn't probably be able to get hold of someone to be able to do that right away. So that definitely has happened. I'll just say just once though. And then, so obviously, as I mentioned in the talk, obviously that first initial conversation is that discovery piece. But I feel it also is important to note, being the fact that we are a little bit different from the big five, is that we can still offer all the same products that they do. So obviously we can offer the normal operating and savings accounts. We also have the merchant services options. So for credit card payment within your facility, that kind of thing. We have multiple options in terms of business credit cards that keep expenses separate, which is another thing that David loves. And then other things such as lines of credit, as I mentioned, for whether maybe you wanted to purchase a new massage bed, or even operating loans, or once we get to the bigger thing, looking at commercial mortgages for a new practice. And as I said, the biggest thing is that actual relationship with someone at their bank. So it's important to note here that it shouldn't be up to you guys to know what you need, because I mean, that's not something you're an expert in. So it's my role within that meeting, and as the relationship continues, is to figure out what your goals are and to make the right suggestions for the products that you guys should be in. So I think that's the point that I want to drive home tonight, is the fact that it's my job to come up with that plan after getting you to tell me what your goals are. So I mean, and this is kind of the slogan. This is kind of what's going around as our ad campaign right now. It's basically the thing that we exist to make it possible. So I'm not going to read that all out. I'll leave it up there. It'll be on the video as well too. And as I said, you've probably seen it on TV if you happen to watch. I believe it was on during the 4 other games that people got to see in the playoffs. So I believe it was on there. So I mean, as I said, I'm always here to connect, even if you don't bank with ATB and if you're not thinking about switching. I'm still definitely open to having a conversation, because even once we talk about the business side of things, like, it's also important to note that even on business lending, personal credit and personal income is still an important factor. So even if you're planning about potentially making a move, career-wise into a different facility, or looking at changing into a business or something, it's important to still have that personal credit score and that income in place, so you can do that even if it's a couple of years down the road. So that planning is definitely a piece that I can help with. So as I mentioned, we're gonna reach out afterwards to connect with those that are here. This video will be available, and I just wanted to say thanks for listening to my piece, and now we'll kick it back to Robin.
Awesome, thank you. At this point, is there anybody that has questions for Eric that wants to pop off mute? We'll give just a couple of seconds. I did have a question. I would love to hear a little bit about the Entrepreneur Center, and especially what services are available to sole proprietors, new business owners, etc. at the Entrepreneur Center.
Perfect. So obviously there's multiple entrepreneur centers. There's one in Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, and Grand Prairie, I believe, was where the fourth one is. And before COVID, there was always an offering of multiple workshops in person, whether it's anywhere from writing a business plan, or I know even people in our BNI chapter have gone there and made presentations on things such as HR policies. So which would be key if you're looking at hiring employees, as Robin probably is aware of. And another good free resource that ATB offers is the ATB Entrepreneur Strategist. So if you are looking for someone to help you write a business plan, obviously that's not something I'm an expert in, but ATB does offer professionals in that can help you do that for free. They won't actually write it for you, but they'll give you tips and they'll lead you through that and help you come up with that plan yourself. So the Entrepreneur Center, this will be a link that will be included in the final email out as well to it. But it's just another great resource that ATB offers that, as I said, is free, even without technically banking at ATB.
Cool. Are they offering, I should know the answer to this, but are they offering some of those seminars? And because I mean, they were doing networking, they were doing seminars, they were doing courses. Are they offering any of that stuff online right now, or is all just kind of on pause?
No, so there's still multiple offers. Like, I'm just looking, there's actually one tomorrow on corporate and intellectual property and employee basics for startups. And there's actually one in the middle of June. That's you're hiring your first employee. What does that look like and what does that take? So there's multiple ones per month. And it's located, as I said, it's webinars now. Before they used to be in person, so it's a little bit easier to attend those now. And I do believe they do record those and send those out to anyone that signs up as well after.
Awesome. So just to circle back to that free banking that you mentioned, so what does that look like with ATB? Yeah.
So in terms of whether you incorporated or you registered a trade name in 2021, so that's a company-wide initiative. Free banking for a full year, and that entails basically your monthly maintenance fees. So that could be anywhere from $5 a month, which is our lowest account, to our limited account, which is $60 a month. And as I said, that's free for a year. It also includes a free MasterCard, so no annual fee for a year. Obviously, if you're carrying a balance, the interest charges would still accrue and still be charged. But in terms of the annual fee, that's also free. And there's also other things included in there, well, as e-transfers, limited one-off transfers if you're paying employees that way. So as I said, it's a big time savings, especially for those in their first year that are going through a lot of change and a lot of expenses. It's definitely something that's worth taking advantage of. And then in terms of the less than the 12 months, that's something that I'd be willing to offer to people on this call or that watch this video in terms of that. And as I said, that could be anywhere from 3 months to 12 months, depending on depending on the situation, where we'd be able to offer just the monthly account fees. We'd be able to waive those for that period of time.
Cool. I didn't realize how valuable having free banking was for a year until my first month of paying for my business banking happened. And then I wanted to go back to personal banking. And my accountant would not have been happy about that. So I think we'll pause here in the Q&A. It looks like everybody's still on mute. So why don't I introduce David? I will just mention that most recently, David helped me apply for the SEBA loan, which was something that was extremely, extremely stressful and quite difficult because of when Zenith incorporated. And he is so patient with answering questions. I'm in the process of switching my accounting over to Frederick and Sherwin LLP. And already I can just feel this weight lifted off my shoulders. So before you start, thank you, David, for what you did to help me with that loan application. And I'm excited to see your presentation.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Robin, and just thank you for the opportunity. We love, there's so many things going on with the government right now. We've got so many clients with so many questions like yourself. So we love dealing with that. So let me tell you a little bit about myself and then about what Frederick and Sherwin is, and then we'll go into a bit of the meat of it. So a little bit about me. Accounting has always kind of run through my veins. My granddad was an accountant. My mother was a bookkeeper and a business owner in Edmonton here. And yeah, and so and I knew I wanted to be an accountant ever since I was, I think, in grade 9 or so. So I started off my journey and I articled with a company called Myers Norris Penny in town, which is like one of those large accounting firms and that sort of thing. So after working with them, I moved on to work with Stantec in their mergers and acquisitions, where we just kind of flew around the country and bought a bunch of companies for Stantec. So it was super fun. And then kind of went into a more traditional accounting role where we're doing monthly reports with All Weather Windows as their financial controller. After that, I've always wanted to open up what we call a public practice. It might be private practice in massage or public practice. I don't know. Everybody kind of refers to it as different things, but I opened up a company and I've been doing that for about 10 years now. So about Frederick and Sherwin, we really focus in on our client relationships is kind of number one for us. We're not a large accounting firm. We've got 2 partners, we've got 4 CPAs and 3 staff here, and that's about the max that we'll grow to. So one thing that we focus on is we don't have any billable rates. We're not like a typical lawyer or an accountant who picks up the phone and the clock starts ticking and you get an invoice at the end. We don't do that at all. We have some easy invoicing options. We quote all of our work up front so that our clients know what they're getting into. And also for some of our clients where we do the bookkeeping for them and we do their corporate tax returns and that sort of stuff, we just bill them monthly and just take a straight debit kind of out of their accounts each month. So what sort of work do we do for our clients? As a public accountant, we basically take care of everything to do with CRA. So that would be filing your personal tax returns or helping with your GST return. We're compiling your bookkeeping and creating financial statements for bank or loans or lending. We are filing incorporated tax returns, dealing with GST, helping with payroll situations, making payroll happen, that sort of stuff. So anything really with CRA. And so how we work with a variety of clients kind of all over Canada, basically. So we work in a digital realm as much as possible, but we also have the majority of our clients here in Sherwood Park or Edmonton and area, where we're meeting in person and we're taking records in, compiling information, and then meeting with our clients prior to anything being sent out to CRA. And the big thing that we really focus here, and the reason why you'd want to get a CPA is for tax planning, so that we can actually make an effective tax plan. We know what we're getting into for taxes. We can save for them accordingly. And we actually have a tax plan, not only just for this year, but also the next 30 years of you and your business, as well as a retirement tax plan. It's quite important. Spending money on taxes frivolously isn't a great idea. And it's one of your biggest expenses for your life. You pay 30%, 40% every year. So it's a good amount of cash going to the government. So let us take care of that and make sure that we're doing it appropriately. So we're going to talk about 2 things here in this presentation. One is just around record keeping. It's one of our biggest questions we kind of always get, and we talk to a lot of our clients about it. So walking through sort of the record keeping progression, we'll start off with banking setup. So obviously, Eric mentioned it a ton. Having multiple bank accounts for multiple businesses is really important. So one thing that I do is I've got my wallet here, I've got my 2 personal debit and credit cards, and then for my business on the other side, I've got my business debit and my business credit card. I'm separating those so that when I'm at a store and I'm buying, I don't know, milk, I'm going to say this milk's for the coffee for my clients, and I'm going to pay for that milk with my business credit card. And then I'm buying groceries personally, and I'm going to pay for that with my personal credit card. And now what we've got is we've got a complete list of all these personal transactions and a complete, start to finish list of all these business transactions. So that's really quite helpful for your accountant and a really great thing to do. And as Eric mentioned, we can help out with those business banking fees, which is always great for that first year. So which records to keep? And so what is an expense? This is a really tough one to answer. So we kind of boil it down to the basics of the Tax Act. And any expense that's incurred to make income or potentially make income can be an expense. So you're buying an iPad, are you using that for business purposes, or are your kids playing with it all day long? There's lots of different expenses that could or couldn't be, and that's one that's just kind of a tough one. Are your golf fees deductible, Eric? Unfortunately not. But if you have drinks afterwards, then those can be deductible. So the Tax Act is very specific on these things. It's really tough to figure it out, but that's what we're here for. That's what we field all those calls for with our clients. So then once we've figured out which credit card or debit card that we used, record retention, just keeping those records. One thing that we inform is kind of just having a file system for all your records, all your receipts, maybe a digital folder for all the emails that you get. We do have to keep records for up to 8 years after they've been filed. So that's a length of time. That's why we kind of say Ziploc bags even work great. Some of those receipts, we don't want them to keep rubbing together. So putting them in a Ziploc bag, storing them under the stairs for almost an eternity is basically what we have to do. Tracking and documenting those purchases. So there's so many different programs out there. We kind of work with them all, and I'd be open to working with really any of them. There's some free ones, and most of them are a $9 to $30 a month sort of deal. But what we need to do is we need to take all of those transactions in that business bank account and basically categorize them. QuickBooks Online is a great place. There's a company called Xero, even Excel, or just having a manual book where you're writing them all down, a little manual ledger and keeping track of them there. One thing that we do with our clients is we do have a bunch of templates. So, if you're in this meeting or if you're watching this video, please send me a note. We can definitely send you some of our templates that we use, which just kind of correlate with the tax systems that we use as well, just to track those records. The more that you can do to document all your purchases and track everything, the cheaper your accounting fees can be, and also just gives you a better idea as to where your business is. So after this, just once we've got all these sort of documents together, we know the incomes and the expenses of our business, savings for taxes is huge. As a sole proprietor or an incorporated company, a business owner, we basically get 100% of our money comes into our bank account. And then most Albertans, we just use it. And we have to pay the tax man at the end of the year. So knowing how much that bill is going to be is a really important thing. So having that discussion with your accountant, taking all of your tracking tools and having a conversation with your accountant would be really good for that, to come up with that percentage. When we work with our clients, we typically will talk through their sort of income and their expenses to come up with a percentage of sales to save for taxes that's best. That way, every dollar that comes in, we're putting that percentage of sales into a savings account and kind of saving it for the year end, so there's no big surprises. So that's a little bit about records. Up next, I'm going to talk about sole proprietorships versus incorporations. These are two different types of businesses that you can create. Sole proprietorship is fairly basic. Anybody running a hobby or just going into business as a subcontractor, which would another term that would be used, and making money or making income, basically automatically has a sole proprietorship. So sole proprietorships, you can get a trade name for them if you want your banking to be something specific and have a website and a presence that way. Definitely a trade name is the way to go there. And then you can create this sole proprietorship. You don't actually need one for taxes, but you do have to report your income. So how to do that? Sole proprietorships file their taxes with their personal taxes. It's actually fairly simple and straightforward. What we need there is a list of income and all of our different categories of expenses and how to deduct your vehicle and how to deduct a home office expense, and all these sorts of things are the questions that we face with a lot with our clients. With sole proprietorships, we're stuck with a December year end. And the reason that's important is basically we make all of our money in a given year, and as a sole proprietorship from January to December, we pay tax on that net income. All that tax is owed by April 30th. We do have a June 15th extension though, and everybody kind of talks about that and thinks they can pay their tax later. Well, the extension is just for the filing of those personal taxes because you're a sole proprietor. It's but you still have to pay that amount by April 30th. So all of our clients that we work with, even though we've got this extension, we need to know how much we have to pay in taxes, and we have to pay it by April 30th. So that's kind of our deadline there. But if you haven't filed your taxes yet for 2020, do so by June 15th, because then we can at least, we might have a little bit of interest, but we can alleviate the penalties on filing late. So that June 15th is now an important deadline. On that net income that we have as a sole proprietorship, and this is the sort of the biggest issue here, is we pay tax on what we call our marginal tax rate. So we've got $100,000 worth of income that came in, and we've got expenses. We're writing off everything we can, and maybe we come up with $0 to $19,000 worth of net income. Well, on that, most of that income will be tax-free, and that's if you don't have any other sources of, dividend income or investment income or employment income, that sort of thing. Most of that would be tax-free, but the later end would be 15% tax on that net income. If we land that net income in between 20 and 48,000, now we're into the 25% tax bracket. So it's only the money and the income that you have in that tax bracket that's taxed at that higher rate. So the first 19 grand would be taxed anywhere from 0 to 15%. And then the remainder of income in that 20 to 48 bracket would be taxed at 25%. And then 49 to 97 is taxed at another 5%, so 30.5% there. And our tax rates climb all the way up into 305 plus, and then we're at some 52% tax brackets. So we'll do our best to get away from there. But if you're into those sorts of incomes, we're definitely getting incorporated. So that's important. Now, the next thing about sole proprietorships, and kind of another big difference between incorporating and being a sole proprietorship, is as a sole proprietorship, you're your own boss. You are the company and you're the employee. And all of your income, if you have no other source of CPP eligible income, you've got to pay both portions of CPP on that. So that's 5.45%, and that rate's going up every year, thanks Trudeau, on income up to $62,000. We've got to pay both sides, so the employer and the employee portion. So we're paying 11% on that. That's $6,500 in tax or in CPP that we've got to pay. So those two big things are the marginal tax rates, and then that CPP is basically taxed on all income up to 62 grand. Now, incorporations. So incorporations is kind of the next level or the next step, and there's reasons why we would get incorporated and why we would stay as a sole proprietor for sure. So, but some of the benefits and some of the downsides are here. So, an incorporation is a separate entity. That's kind of our number one. We're allowed to have what we call a staggered year end. So for instance, we could have a January 31st year end. So we could make all our same money, not from January to December, but from February to January. And we could earn all that income. And then throughout that year end, we could decide to issue a bonus or a dividend on December 31st or January 31st. So we can take all that year's income and we can kind of smooth it. Some will fall into 2021, some will fall into 2022, and we can do that every year. So we've got this option to kind of try to smooth your personal taxes as much as possible. But the big ticket here for incorporations is this discussion around dividends versus salary. And that one's a big discussion. it's really tough to say which one's better for you. It depends on your age, how long you've contributed to CPP, your family, your RSP plan. There's so many different things in there. That's why when you're incorporated, you do need an accountant. A chartered accountant or a CPA would be great so that they can actually determine what's best for you. If you've got a bunch of education credits, you can't be on dividends yet. We've got to have you on a salary approach to use up those credits, things of that nature. So that one's really important. Now, the biggest difference between those two, if we've got $100,000 in net income again, income and then minus $50,000 worth of expenses, we're left with $50,000 of net income. That's what we're paying tax on. If we issue a dividend to you personally, or we issue a bonus to you personally, we're going to end up in the same tax position or a very similar tax position, most likely. But the biggest issue there is if we go with a dividend route, we can actually elect out of paying CPP. So that's an 11% savings on that. And so that's kind of our biggest determining factor if we're going to play a dividend versus salary approach, and if we want to put into CPP or not. And we can take those sort of CPP tax savings and maybe have Eric set us up with a TFSA and get that money into there instead. So there's lots of different options around that sort of retirement planning. Corporations have 11% flat tax rate. So all of our income that comes out of the company, we pay 11% on it, and that's it, up to $500,000. So we've got lots of room there each year. And then after that 11%, we have to take that money personally. And that's where those sort of marginal tax rates come up with. But the biggest sort of benefit here is we could have $100,000. I always use that. It's the easiest six-figure number out there. And we could pay corporate tax on that at 11%. So there goes 11,000. And then maybe we only took 50 grand personally and bought our groceries and paid for our house with that. So now we've got left over $39,000 in the company. Well, that's only been taxed at 11%, which is actually pretty minimal. And we can keep that. And basically what we call the ultimate deferral of tax, where that money and that equity stays in the company until retirement, so that we're trucking along in our earning years at a medium tax level. And then when we retire, we've got a chunk of money in the company and we just keep trucking along in that medium tax bracket versus making all our money and paying tax and then retiring and paying just a little bit of tax. So that's kind of the ultimate deferral of tax that we talk about in a lot of retirement planning. So the downside about incorporations, it's a whole other sort of being that we've got to take care of. We've got to file its taxes and we've got to deal with it when it's kind of done. There's a lot of work there. We are into some more higher accounting fees, obviously, because of some of this tax planning. But there's just a lot of benefits there. So that's kind of my two pieces on incorporation versus sole proprietorship. Again, like I said, we are 100% open to questions. We're the accounting firm that doesn't have a billing rate or anything. So even if you're watching this video and you're curious about sole proprietorships or incorporations, and that's something that you're being faced with, let's sit down for a meeting, or let's have a Zoom call, or let's even just have a phone call. Please give me a call and we can chat about your specific situation and kind of make the decision that's best for you in this time. So we're here to help. We're here to take questions from our customers every day, find the correct answers and solutions for their business. Thanks so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thanks, David. I have heard
Yeah.
that presentation about sole proprietor versus incorporation from you and other accountants many times, and it's still there's still elements to that confuse me. Is there?
Yeah, there absolutely is.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Is so our muted 5 here. Does anyone have a question?
Yeah, hi guys. I got a quick question. Thank you so much. I love the presentation
Sure.
so far. Really great information. I invited a friend that is a massage therapist that wasn't able to attend today, and I know one of the questions he had was around, she's self-employed, was around building her retirement through an RSP. So this may be a question for David or Eric or both together. But what are your thoughts in a sole prop starting to build their retirement through the RSPs?
I think that's a great opportunity. So as a sole prop, we're going to be stuck paying that CPP regardless. So we're going to be investing in our own CPP at the max 11% there. But buying RSPs is a great way to take our total net income from our sole proprietorship and reduce it. So that reduces it by those marginal tax rates. So one thing we want to be careful of there is that we don't want to be using up a bunch of our RSP room in the $0 to $19,000 category, because we're realistically not saving a whole lot of tax. Even at the $20,000 to $48,000 tax bracket, we're saving 25 cents on the dollar there. But what we want to be careful of is maybe, once we're in retirement, maybe we're in a higher tax bracket there. So we don't want RSP deductions now only to be included in income later in retirement at a 30.5% tax bracket. So kind of depending on a person's situation, that $20,000 to $48,000 tax bracket is a great place to be using your RSPs, and even better places kind of over that $48,000 mark. And a lot of what we try to do with RSPs is get people just down to the next step ladder. So we want your net income to be exactly $48,907 or whatever our tax bracket is that year. And so we'll use RSPs to do that, so that we're using them at the higher tax brackets. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks for the very valuable. Thank you.
For sure. Yeah, an RSP is a great retirement vehicle when we don't have an incorporation to help us with that. So good question.
So I guess I have a follow-up question for that. The advice that some people get is that they should incorporate as soon as possible. And I'm curious what your advice is, if there is sort of an income threshold, or how you would decide when would be the right time to incorporate.
100%. There's definitely an income threshold in there. It's kind of that net income around that 30 grand mark. And if our net income is down between the 0 and the 19s, there's a lot of programs out there and personal tax programs, social programs that can really help with our taxes and pay most of that CPP for us, such as the Canadian Working Benefit, and just even GST credits and lots of different things. So we realistically want our net income to be year over year, and that would be bottom line net income, revenues minus expenses, to come down to that net income. We want that to be over 30 grand on a continual basis. And that's where we're more prepared to be incorporated. But again, it's not it's a fun one. It's not a default, yes, let's get incorporated right now. There's lots of different tests to make. So having that discussion with any sort of CPA is a great place to start.
Very good advice. Thank you. What about something that did not get mentioned when I was at massage school, and I sort of discovered by accident at my first job, is GST numbers. What would you say for advice on when to get your GST number?
Yeah, well, GST is always a fun one and doesn't get talked at too much, but there's lots of errors there that happen. People have personal GST numbers when they're incorporated and all the like. So when we're getting a GST number, there's this threshold. So as you might have heard, from $0 to $30,000, you don't have to get a GST number, and that's on a rolling 12-month cycle. So even if you take from April last year to April this year, that 12 months, or April to March, if you're over that $30,000 threshold, you actually must get registered for GST at that point. So we can decide to get registered for GST early. Again, that's a tough one. It depends on who your audience is. What we don't want is, we don't want to be charging somebody, say $100 for a massage, and then just randomly the massage goes up to $105, because your clients are going to be like, oh, why did that happen? What's up with the price increase? You're like, no, it's not a price increase. My revenues are just too high, And so that's not a great sort of excuse to have that increase in revenues. And so that's something that why we would maybe get registered earlier.
That makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Claudia, Janice, anything you want to ask?
No questions here. Thank you. That was very informative, though. I've seen the incorporated versus sole proprietor numerous times. And again, like every time I do, I feel like I take one little nugget out. So thank you. That was really informative.
Good.
I appreciate it.
Or two, to just kind of think of it in a way where like clients come to see you guys, and like I'm the same with Robin. I'll learn something new every time I'm there because she's the expert on that. Well, I'm the expert on the banking, and David's the expert on accounting, and I'll leave my body to Robin to fix. That's her job.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
all that golfing. Cool. Well, I think maybe then if there's no other questions, then this is a good place to leave it. So thank you so much, Eric and David, for putting the time in to make a presentation. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much to our 3 guests who are still here. This was really fun. It was a great first info session, I think, and I'm excited to work on some more. Just so you guys know, we will reach out once with an email so that you have our contact information, potentially anything that we forgot to mention. I think Eric said he had a link that he wanted to share, potentially the Entrepreneur Center. And so keep an eye out for that email. And then also we're going to take the recording, and if you wanted to go back and listen to something again, I will be posting it in the Massage Therapists YEG Facebook group. So thank you again very much, and it was lovely being with you here this evening.
Thank you for putting this together. Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Yeah.